Hey everyone, it's Tim here for an update, and I hope you're doing well. By the grace of God, I hope you're enjoying knowing Christ's love for you, and that by His Spirit, that truth and the experience of that love is guarding your heart and providing you with encouragement and motivation as you walk through the week and the good works that God has set out for you to walk in this week. And I want to, here in this update, do something I haven't done before, and I'm going to try to do this maybe every few months. Every once in a while, bring one of these out. But I want to review a children's Bible. And as a family, we have gone through several of these, and we have a few more we'd like to work through as we read to our kids. We try to read a little entry of one of these before bed each night. We don't get to it every single night, but most of the time we're able to. And so we work through these, and we've got experience with various ones, and they have different strengths and weaknesses. And so I thought, hey, it'd be helpful. Just I know there's a lot of folks with babies being born right now and very little children, which is really exciting as a church. And then people maybe with older kids that are working through what resources they might want to use. So I just thought I'd share what we've found. So the first one that's up today is the Children's Story Bible by Catherine Vos. And this is put out by Banner of Truth. You can see it's very thick. It's a big, I think it's like 500 pages or so. Oh, no, 800 pages. I was way off there. This is a story Bible that was published in 1935. So the story here is that Catherine Vos was the wife of a guy named Gerhardus Vos, who was a professor at Westminster Theological Seminary. And he was the father of the discipline that we now know as biblical theology, kind of in its modern form that we know it. So he's kind of a pioneering scholar with regard to the Bible and how its storyline teaches theology. His wife, they had 4 kids. Over the years, she was a connoisseur of children's Bibles. She would always, whenever she was at like a bookstore and saw a new one she hadn't had, she would get it. So she kind of collected them, and she kind of got familiar with what was out there. And over the years, she never really found one that really scratched the itch that she thought was exactly what she was looking for. So over the years, she kind of worked on writing her own. And this was published 2 years before her death in 1935. I think she had been working on it for something like 20 years. And it's sort of like the children's Bible she had always been hoping to find. So it's quite good. I'll start with its strengths. Probably the greatest strength is it's very thorough. It's very, like I showed you, it's long. It sticks pretty close to the biblical text. A lot of these children's Bibles will have, maybe a few dozen entries that are moving through the Bible storyline, which can be really helpful. But they're summarizing, they're compressing a lot, like the period of the kind of Samuel and Kings, that part of the Bible, it'll kind of get through in maybe just a few entries. Vos is following the Bible's narrative much more closely in kind of a blow-by-blow thing. So a lot of the stories that are in the Bible, even more obscure ones, she'll cover them. She does summarize, and of course, things like genealogies and material that's harder to get through, Levitical laws. It is definitely much more kid-friendly with some of the things that are condensed. But it's more almost like reading a condensed, paraphrased Bible than some of these that are more, again, more like zoomed out and covering large swaths in each entry. So if you want something that sticks closer to kind of the contours of the biblical text, this is a really good one. She's very good at having simple, kid-friendly prose. It's not for, and I'll get into in a moment this too, it's not for the youngest kids, especially maybe kids who aren't used to reading these kinds of things, hearing these kinds of things read. But it's still for kids maybe roughly in a sort of preschool into kindergarten, or early elementary. It's good. It's a good level for them of writing, and we enjoyed it. We worked through it. I think it took us about a year, and it was a good time. We were really grateful for it. Some weaknesses, though. One of the biggest ones that kind of bothered me a little bit as we went through is sometimes in her attempt, I think, to just explain things in really simple terms, she kind of obscures grace. She kind of obscures the freeness of grace, and that it's faith alone that takes hold of God's saving grace. So just for example, when she's talking about God making promises to Abraham in Genesis 15 and other places, in Genesis 15 says, Abraham believed God and it was counted to him as righteousness. And Paul likes to point to that and say, look, this is justification. through faith alone, in the promise of God, of course, anticipating Christ as the object of saving faith now. But she, for instance, she talks about how Abraham believed God's promise, and she says, it was because Abram believed God, even when it was very hard to believe, that God loved Abram very much. And I read that and go, I think she's trying to say faith is the basis for God's saving blessings, but it sounds kind of like all of God's love for Abram, as she's saying, is contingent on Abram's faith, whereas in reality, it's God's love that chose Abram. So God's love is prior. So it kind of, and there are other places too, and she's describing how Enoch walked with God. It's kind of legalistic. It's kind of like Enoch tried to be good and things like that. He loved God. And I just think, Sister, Hebrews 11, it was by faith that Enoch walked with God. So that's a bit of a weakness that I would just be aware of if you're going to use this. Because she goes into the narratives and follows them pretty closely, there's also not a lot of theological kind of explanation. There's a lot of kind of the story and a little light bit of explanation, but she kind of just leaves it out there, which I think, okay, as parents, if you're reading, you just need to be ready to maybe make some commentary and expand on some things to help kids understand what's going on. What are we learning from this about God and about knowing Him and things like that? And that could be an opportunity to maybe shore up some of these places where it's sort of like, if you love God and try to please Him, you're good, like to try to maybe bolster its faith that we receive the salvation and blessing of God. So that would be something to be aware of. There's a few illustrations. There are not many at all, and they're spread out, and they're a little bit weird. I'll just say I don't know, it's kind of a weird style of illustration, so I wouldn't want to bank on that. But who is this Bible good for? This would be good, like I said, for kids who are a little bit older than the really little ones. And I would gauge based on how used to sitting and listening to reading are they, how used to sitting and listening to Bible stories are they. I wouldn't recommend this if you haven't done any reading of like a Bible story, a children's story Bible to kids. I would not start here. But if you've got some experience working through these, this would be a good one if you want to get a little bit more of a thorough trip through the Bible. We enjoyed it that way. The readings will probably take in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 minutes. That's without interruptions, which, believe it or not, can happen when you're reading to little kids. So anyway, that's my review and recommendation for the Child's Story Bible by Catherine Vos. If you get it and use it, I'd love to hear what you think of it and even advice about how to use it for your kids. With that, just regarding where we're at as church announcements-wise, we're continuing our Equipping Hour series on how to change. That's at 9 a.m. on Sunday. And then we have corporate worship at 10:30. We're taking the Lord's Supper because it's the first Sunday of the month there in morning worship. And we have our sack lunch afterward because, again, first Sunday of the month. So if you are ready with a sack lunch, you'll be all set for that. And then we have our evening service at 5 p.m., which in addition to hearing a devotional and singing and things, it's going to be more focused around prayer. So I want to invite you to make that a priority. I know it'll be a great blessing to you. And also we have other prayer gatherings, Bible studies, and other things that you'll find in the newsletter. We have a church workday coming up that you can sign up for. So plenty of things going on to be aware of. But for now, I'll say goodbye, and I look forward to seeing you Sunday. All right, bye-bye.